we're going to do this panel thingy, and before I have all the illustrious panelists up here, I would like to congratulate them all on being such brilliant speakers. They have clearly answered all your questions ahead of time, because I have not had one question submitted. Not one. So, all of you teachers who are forever moaning at your children saying, "Have you done your assignment? Have you done your homework?" And they say, "No, the dog ate it." But the best excuse, genuine excuse, remember I live in the UK, the best excuse I ever had for not giving him homework was, "I'm sorry sir, I left it in Canada." And she really had left it in Canada. She'd been in Canada on a vacation, staying with family over there, and she'd left her homework. But none of you have been to Canada since this morning. So don't try that one. So I have somewhere, or I'm going to find, a beautiful assistant. Hansa, can you be my beautiful assistant, please? I have bits of paper. If you're thinking, "Oh, yeah, I've got a question," like the question that's, sorry about this mic. I'm going to switch it in a minute. I'll switch it now. Hello. Never worked with children or animals or anything with electricity. So here I have some bits of paper, and if you're suddenly thinking, "Oh, I've got a question," I asked Steph just now, "Have you got a question?" She said, "Yes, could a black hole crush Jesus?" And I thought, "Yeah, that's a really interesting question I'd like to put to Connie, so maybe we'll start." If you think, "Oh yes, of course I have a question," Hansa here, my beautiful assistant, is going to hand out bits of paper. Even if you don't have a question, just take a bit of paper, because that will encourage me that you're at least alive. And I'm not talking to a collection of AI bots. Right, let me invite our 5 panelists to come up, and please give them a genuine and real, not virtual, round of applause as they come up. So we have Connie and Sven and Gold and Nadia, and where's Cornelia? Yes, because you answered the email and you said, "Oh yes, I'll do it." Yes, you did. I have digital proof. Right, there is one mic which you picked up. Doesn't mean you have to use it first, Cornelia. So whilst we're just about to be overwhelmed by a tsunami of questions, I think I'm going to start with. I have a number of questions here, but I'm going to start with one that's actually prompted by something that Connie said yesterday about being subversive. And so my question to each of you is, what do you think in our current culture are the key values of the kingdom of God which subverts or undermine or overturn the values of the age? Who would like to start that? Oh, Cornelia's going to start, look. There. Cornelia's going to start.
No, you go ahead. I was thinking of love your enemy. It's such a different notion to our world, and especially in our polarized societies that we are having. Loving your enemy should be like a first thing. Maybe others.
Okay, thank you.
I'm thinking about we must be like children.
Okay, do you want to expand on that a little bit? I mean, it's
we are to grow up to maturity, but we need to be like children. I don't go on, I just answer the question.
Okay.
So answer number one, God, Jesus, the Trinity, created the universe. So could Jesus be crushed by a black hole would be as frightening as could the little spiral in your bathtub take you out when it drained the water. So no, Jesus could not be crushed by a black hole.
Thank you.
Okay, so the real question. I would just, again, if you were here when I spoke, go back to the Beatitudes. If we can be the poor in spirit, the mourners, the meek, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, and the persecuted, we will subvert culture.
And if I connect with love your enemies, I would say love your neighbor, or like all people, because like in the Swedish curriculum, it's very much based on Christian values, but people don't really care. They just care about a few things of them. So this thought about loving your neighbor is radical today, I think. Because the main thinking is that avoid people that will draw energy from you. Just be around people that will give something to you. And loving your enemy is quite another way of looking at it.
Maybe I can add something about the love, true love. Something from 1 Corinthians 13, as a beautiful description of the love and hope.
Yeah, a bit louder, Nadia.
About the love from the 1 Corinthians 13. This beautiful explanation of the true love, and about the hope, because the hope in Jesus, what we have, it's amazing, cannot compare with other kind of hopes in the world. So, and also about our spiritual creation. So we are spiritual human being, not only materialistic, material world, but there is something more about this. Maybe to provoke people to think more about the soul. Yeah, this kind of aspect. And who created the soul, of course.
Yeah, I want to pick up on hope there, seeing as you mentioned it, because I was in Steph's workshop actually this morning about creation care and the whole environmental question, and with pupils and particularly younger people who simply have less life experience to look at and to draw from. How do we communicate about these as leaders and as teachers and still communicate hope? How do we avoid simply painting a picture where there's only bad news? Let me start with Cornelia, perhaps, on that.
Fostering hope in our societies. I guess one thing is to realize our realities. Sounds like a paradox, but to acknowledge what's there, and yet say we see another dimension. There's the dimension of the kingdom, and well, that maybe takes some more explanation, but there is something beyond what we can do. There's God to recreate things, and he's done that. He's doing that.
Okay, thank you. Someone else?
Maybe something with hope and happiness, because people, they are searching for happiness, and they have a clear definition about the happiness. It's to happen what I want. But the reality of the life is that it doesn't work like this. There's a lot of situation when it's not happen what you want. Then what's happened to you? And to keep the hope that there's a meaning more about this in this difficult situation. I think it's very important. And then we can start about where's from this hope in this situation. And very often I have this conversation with people, me in my profession and colleagues, and to speak about this hope, because if there's no faith, no hope. And hope is very often connected with the faith, so it's easier to communicate the faith.
I think when people get older and you can have been in a very high position, but then they more and more long to be close to their family, their children, their grandchildren, the little life. And I think we need to get hold of that little life earlier. But because it's like when there is nothing else, we go to that. But that is the most important. And I think the little life, like being like a child and being mature, because Jesus gave us many paradoxes, and that's one of the paradoxes. And if we start to truly live after that, I think we will find hope.
Okay. Any other offerings on hope? Any thoughts?
I can probably just speak without that.
Because you're a mother, right?
Because I'm a mother. Of Caleb, specifically. When we talk with a secular society, I think there is what I would call a temporary hope, and I would ground that in legacy. So for somebody who's looking for hope, why should I go on? It's what's your legacy? What are you going to leave behind? Exactly what you were saying, your children, your grandchildren. So there's a sense of purpose, of drive for a legacy. Creation care is not because I might die and the world's not great, but maybe in 20 years it'll be better. So it's a legacy. But Paul said, without Christ, there is no hope. And so that's a very temporary hope. If we want to actually give people hope, a living hope, there is no way around the gospel. Mm-hmm. There's no way to fake it, to pretend that there's another way forward without the death, life, resurrection of Jesus Christ. There just isn't. It's a challenge. That's your biggest challenge, is how do you do that in a culture that says you can't talk about your faith. That's a challenge. The challenge is not what is faith. The challenge is how do I say that.
Now, I've heard it said that the person who has the most hope has the most influence, and I think that's a challenge for us all. Very difficult to be influential if we don't have hope. Mm. Right, I have the audience question here. Are you all ready for this? Well, I have the first one, so thank you, whoever wrote this. How do we, in all of these things, treat children who are simply rebellious? How do we go about working with children, and I suppose it's at any age, but perhaps might be more particularly with teens who just decide not to cooperate and want to be the opposite. Sven, you didn't answer the question last time, so I'm going to start with you. And there's a mic.
Yeah. I was chatting with my daughter just before, and she asked how is it going, and I said I will be in the panel in a few minutes, trying to avoid answering difficult questions.
No chance.
No. My experience when I was a principal was that the key in these situations was that the student could feel that I was for him or her. Because when they could feel that, eventually I could come through to them when we were talking. And sometimes we tell ourselves that we want their best, but it's not what they feel when we meet with them. Yeah.
So are you really saying part of this answer is to can't do it quickly. You have to build something up over a period of time.
Yeah, I think so. It's a process inside myself first, not some special method to use.
Anyone else? Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, I'd like to. As a young teacher, I had this word I really have used my whole life, that the weak ones you should encourage, but unruly you should rebuke. That's a harsh word. And many times those that seem to be unruly, they are the weak ones. And those that are really that should be, I'm not talking about rebuking in a bad way, but set a red line for them. They could look like very, sober, and so I think, and I always give the advice to teachers, don't judge what you see, but know in your heart what you deal with. And my way of rebuking those that even could be unruly, of course, because you need to be know the rules. And I said, I will speak as long that you will be so tired. I will go through all what's happening, so you can listen now or you can wait. And eventually you will fall down onto the table and you will fall asleep and say, stop speaking. And they knew that. So they would say, only take 3 minutes. So find a tool how to give them security. This will not be dangerous. They know it's a clarity, what to expect. This is what you expect. But the most important thing is to try to find what we call rebellions many times is not rebellion, it's a weakness, and start to lift them up.
I could add to that saying, before care, maybe there is a basic respect that I want to bring to the table, and see the other person with respect, even if the behavior is unruly and rebellious. Looking behind or beyond what I see is surely helpful, to get an understanding for the background of that person. But I want to meet the person with respect and say, and maybe ask for respect as well, as we meet as humans, with some human dignity. I acknowledge that you have a voice and that you want to voice what you need in some way, but please also take responsibility for your actions and negotiate on them.
Okay, let me open the question up a bit more, because part of the reason for having this gathering, this conference, is to say, how do we take these topics and these questions and approach them in a way which builds bridges rather than barriers between people. And I wonder if you have had specific examples that you could draw on where you think, here was a situation either with a pupil or with a colleague or somebody you were talking with who was clearly had a very, very different view to you, and yet you managed to build a bridge of communication, even if it wasn't one of agreement. I remember something again that Connie said about the pupil who hated Christians less, or student. It was a student who hated Christians less, which I thought, yeah, that sums that up well. But anybody, can you think of specific examples where that's happened? How did that start off? What did you do? What was the kind of outcome of that?
I can share. I'm a class teacher now from the last year.
Just for the benefit of those who weren't in one of your workshops, can you just explain your role in the school and the other things that you do, just so people know what you're talking out of, Nadia?
Yeah, I'm a principal of the school now, Christian school in Bulgaria, in Sofia. And I'm a teacher of critical thinking and Christian ethics, but last year, I have to take a class because the teacher going maternity leave, and so I said, okay, and it was very difficult class. A lot of boys in the class and very aggressive and nervous, and even because they're coming for the first year in our school, they didn't know the rules, and they're coming from broken families with a lot of anger in their hearts. And it's a boy that all teachers, they don't like him. He's provocative, always do something, always interrupt the classes and like this. And I'm in the class with them, and he start to yell and pushing the chairs and like this. And all kids, they look at me because they know the rules. Go out. And I said, okay, I realize you don't feel well now. I realize that something makes you suffer now. Please, be calm and tell me later what's happening. Doesn't work. Continue more. And kids continue observing. I said, okay, now I tell you again, I'm serious. You're in the class. I'm the teacher. I'm understanding that something happened to you. It's make you feel damn good. I'm here. I'm open. I want to know what's happened to you. But now it's the class. You interrupt the class, and all your classmates, they waiting for me to start. No way. Continue. And then I said, okay, please. Go out. Take your time. Take your time. And then, when you are ready, I invite you to come again. I'm waiting for you. And he and the first he said, no, I will stay here. And I go close to him. And I said, now I'm kind with you. Please, take your time. So he go out. And then I start my class. After several minutes, I open the door and I check him. How are you now? Are you ready to come in the class? We are waiting for you. And he came and was down. So what I realized, I have a conversation after this. Always I'm asking kids to come after some kind of problem. Tell me what's happened. I need something. Tell me what's happened. And then I realize he's very frustrated. He's coming from Greece. And family, they are divorced, and he will lose a lot of important things for him. So he has so many insecurity inside. And he shows this insecurity and fear of rejection, of trouble, of problems during and his behavior and doing something like this, get attention. So I try to work with him on this emotional level. So it's depend of what is the aggressive behavior or protest, or what is the meaning of this and what's happened with the child. So now, when he starts again, I tell him, I realize that you are not satisfied now. Believe me, I want to know more about this, but now is not the right moment, and this is not the right way. Okay, later, let's speak. And I realize that he goes down, calm down, and now he's coming and saying, I want to speak to you, Miss Taikola. Okay, I'm here to listen you, so just wait 5 minutes. And he started waiting, he started to communicate, and over the atmosphere in the class is changed now, and the kids start to love him, not to accept him, and he's not from Christian background, so it's very often Christians, kids said, oh, he's not Christian because of this, they rejected him. Secondary,
it's a good example for the pupil. Any examples with somebody, with another adult, someone at kind of peer-to-peer, the same sort of level, with perhaps in one of the areas that we've been talking about here, or some other difficult or contentious area? I'm sure nobody would ever fall out with any of you, because you're all such peaceful people. I'm looking at all of you, none of you are looking at me, which is that's usually kind of body language for, I don't want to talk to you. So you've all just fallen out with me on this one, so nothing come to mind of how you built a bridge with some, in some difficult relationship with a parent or another colleague, or...
I took a page out of Jesus' handbook, call it the Bible. There's nobody who was more rebellious through his whole life than Peter. And up until the day that Jesus was arrested, you know, Peter was rebellious. You won't do what you're saying that you will do. So it was a long process of walking with Peter, and confrontation and forgiveness. And so when I've had colleagues or other parents, I think on the rugby field, I think even in school situations, when I worked as a staff worker with GBU, which is the University Student Movement, my technique to build bridges was always ask a question. There's always a reason why they don't like you, or they've got a problem with you. It's not, most people just don't out of the blue not like you. There's a reason. You remind them of someone, you said something, you looked at them and they misinterpreted it. Jesus always asked questions, always. It was his way to communicate. The woman at the well, you know, he asked her a series of questions until they finally got to what the issue was. And I just find it disarms people because it shows several things. I want to know, and I want to know what, from your side. I'm not going to tell you what I think. I want you to tell me. And it shows that I'm not in a rush. And I understand if this is going to take time. And if they say, I don't want to answer your questions now, I actually do say, that's okay, but I'm not going to let this go. It's important to me that we work well together, or that we live peaceably together. And inevitably it has worked. I'm not saying we've become best friends. I'm just saying we've been able to always bridge that and work well.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple more questions now, so we're on a roll here. We'll hit all 10 at this rate. This follows on from that a little bit, and it's a question based on the idea of listening to the Holy Spirit in the middle of a conversation. The question is specifically about the classroom, and obviously it is a conference for teachers, but do you have experience of that, of being in a situation and the Lord speaks to you directly into what you're doing, and you change the direction you're going, or you have a question? Some people might categorize it as a word of knowledge or something like that, either in the classroom or in some other situation. And how did that work for you, or how does that work for you? What's going on in your head or your heart as that happens? Is that clear, first of all? Yeah, good. Right, I'll start off this one, because I've got one that comes to mind, and it just gives all of you a chance to think. So I used to teach religious studies, which some of you might call Christian ethics, but we were looking at the question of abortion. And I had a girl in my class who was 15 years old. Her name was Tiffany. It still is, I expect. And she was delightful. She wasn't really very interested in anything of the subject, and academics and her, they didn't really go together. She wasn't that excited about school, really. She was excited about lots of other things, but not really learning. But I was in the middle of this lesson trying to explain Christian views on abortion, and I was looking at Psalm 137, which some of you will know well. You know, you knit me together in my mother's womb, etc., etc. And I thought, hey, this is a good lesson. You've done a really good job here, Graham. And I was kind of watching myself and congratulating myself, applauding because the children weren't. And she came up to me. I set them a job to do. She came up to me and said, "Sir, I don't understand what this has got to do with abortion." And as she said that, two things happened. The first was, Graham, you're not such a great teacher after all. But the second was, there was just a sense within me, and I think I would describe it like, it's like suddenly becoming much more aware of everything that's around me, or you, and I knew that this was a moment that the Holy Spirit wanted to capitalise. And so I said, "Come and sit down, Tiff," and she sat down, and all the rest of the class were working away. And so I went through it again with her, but I knew as I was speaking to her that God was speaking to her in that moment. I would love to say she just gave her life to the Lord there and then, and you know, she's now pastoring a church and seeing hundreds of people saved every week. And, you know, that's not true. The last time I saw her, she was working as a travel agent. We had a really nice conversation. That's just one example that comes to mind. So, any examples? How does it work for any of you?
I'm thinking, you know, I was thinking about giving over the mic to somebody over there. But it's very hard to really, you want to find a very good example, but I just take an example. I had this boy many years ago. I was a teacher in a communal school. And this boy, and this has happened probably to many of us, all of a sudden, the rest of the class just faded away. It was just he and me. And he started to tell me the most, you know, touching story, hard to really listen. He says, "Yesterday, my mother left my father. It was dancing at home, and then she just left and took another man, and now they're not together." It was like, you know, opening up, and it was just he and I, and everybody was listening. And I could not answer, I just listened. But something happened in my heart. And that moment, I adopted him. That was in 4th grade. In 9th grade, he took contact with our family. Later on, he met a girl that was close to our family. His brother was one of the most criminal person in Sweden. One of those that had been shooting police, you know, that's really the bottom line. But God took this guy without, you know, any answer. It was just like time stopped. Last week I spoke to him. He's a principal now. And when he comes into a situation with his kids, he calls me, and I and another school expert, we work together with him, helping him when you're a principal yourself, you cannot deal with your own kids. So it was like from nothing, a connection. And have easily to speak, harder to listen. But in that situation, I just listened, and God did something. And I think we have those moments of grace that come, and we need to just be aware. God is doing something, and it's the Holy Spirit.
Brilliant, thank you. Any others? Anyone else want to jump in? Nadia?
I just remember a case with one boy in our class, in our school. He's handicapped, no legs who is moving, and so he's on the wheelchair. And I have Christian ethics class with them, and I showed them a movie of Pay Forward. Yeah, it's important. And I planned something. I had idea what to do, but he was attracted by something that I said, and he started to ask me. And in this moment, ask me questions, and in this moment, I realized for him, I start to explain something about the resurrection of the Jesus and how the body will be changed. And this exactly catch him attention, and his attention, and he said to me, Miss Becker, tell me more about this. How it will happen? He's not from Christian background, and this resurrection of the body, I suddenly realized how important it is for him, because there's hope one day to be the body will be restored. And I remember the eyes and face, he listened to me well. And I have this very sweet memory, and also he prayed, he accepted Jesus, and he prayed to be healed, but it doesn't happen. He prayed to have legs again and to walk, but it doesn't happen. And he was very disappointed. But his father tell us 2 years later, and tell us this illness stopped to progress.
Stop to what?
Stop progressing. Yeah, and it's a very severe illness, and maybe he will die after several years, but it stopped progressing, and for me it was a miracle.
That's wonderful, thank you. One more example?
Yeah, there was a group of students in the 7th grade, a group of girls and a group of boys, and the situation between these two groups got worse and worse, because they were so upset about the boys' behaviors, and the boys, they thought that, well, the girls are always favored by the teachers. Maybe you can recognize such situations. And it became, like as a principal, I had to do something, and when there are just conflict between two, I always want to talk to them together, and I want them to listen to one another, but they were, like, I had to take at least 6 of them here. So I didn't plan to talk to all of them at one time, because there was every reason why that would end really bad. So, but then I felt that, yeah, you should have them all of them at the same time. So we sat down, and the girls started to, in the rules there, that they are supposed to describe how they feel in the situation, and the other ones are not allowed to interrupt them. They cannot defend themselves while the other part is speaking. So they explained, and suddenly it was just, you could, in an instance, you could feel a change in the room. And then the boys started to explain, and it was totally different tone from them than before. And after I just asked them, could you feel that something changed here? Yes, it was like an angel walked through the room. And I think we are quite often in these situations, we feel I cannot do anything here. It's locked, the situation. We need an intervention. But God is able to do that in these locked situations.
Okay, thank you. We can take a slightly different tack here to not directly a school-related thing, but related to the type of questions we've been talking about. Is it possible to have people that have hope for the future but apathy for now? So they look at a question and say, oh, it'll be all right in the end, but right now it's a mess, and actually it's not going to get any different. I mean, have you come across that, and how do you deal with that? Actually, Connie, I'm going to look specifically at you, because you laughed, so I thought you probably know what we're talking about here.
There's a whole theological group of people out there who believe that. An English saying is that you can become so heavenly focused that you know earthly good, and that would be that group of people. Yeah, some of us cling to our eternal hope, which we need to cling to our eternal hope, but forget that we are people of good news, and the good news exists for today, tomorrow, and next week. Christ isn't just relevant for when we die. Christ is relevant for right now, for today. He's relevant when I go shopping, when I'm buying produce, when I'm recycling my garbage. He's just there and wants to be consulted, and he wants to bring hope into every single aspect of our lives. So it is very possible to be apathetic and to have a long-term hope. It's just not very much like a Christ follower. Something's missing then. We haven't quite grasped the fullness of our salvation. And there's a lot of students, so I talked with GBU students at a conference, and I actually did pose the question, what is the relevance of Jesus Christ in your life right now? Not when you die, unless you're expecting to die within the next 30 seconds. What is your hope for Jesus now? And it went silent. These are Christian students, most of them who grew up in Christian homes. They go to our nice churches, and they could not tell me one thing of how Jesus was relevant in their life today. So I spent the next hour telling them. But it is a worry for me. It's a worry for me as a leader, as a pastor, as a mom, that Jesus isn't just something we've given our lives to, or a person we've given our lives to so that we have eternal security. But Jesus is someone that we walk with, and we live his joy every single day.
Okay, thank you. Cornelia, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was thinking, of course, we often think in an individual way that we are saved and all of this, but Jesus, when he walked on this earth, said the kingdom has come already, it has started. So how are we to model this, that the kingdom has started as his followers now, with the Holy Spirit within us? Do we model it as a church, that we have a kingdom collective, so to speak, that we love our neighbor, that we love brothers and sisters, that we try to deal with them in a positive way and with hope and faith, acting it out what the kingdom to be, it can be, as Isaiah puts it in this wonderful chapter. Not that we create an utopia, but we can try to follow Jesus in this, that we model Christianity together. And I guess that's important. He doesn't expect apathy from us. And otherwise he could just take us to heaven the moment we start following him. But our following Jesus needs to be put into action.
Which takes us back really to this kind of subversive values idea and the Sermon on the Mount, and inverting the whole system of the world. Are you kind of leaning forward because you're uncomfortable on the chair, or because you have something to say?
Very good answers.
Oh, thank you. Good answers, everyone. Well done. All right. This is a question about boundaries, and it has a specific school application, but it may have other applications as well. Within school, as most of you will know, there's a point you reach, or at least there's a point that most schools reach, when they say this pupil can no longer be part of the school. Sometimes it's called exclusion, sometimes it's called something else. I think it's, oh yes, is it ever appropriate or even loving to expel a child from school? And that's, for most, particularly school leaders, having been one myself, who's been through this process of expelling pupils and not expelling them when everybody else wanted them expelled. It's a really, really interesting question. So let's talk to a former head teacher.
Yeah. I said, yeah, there is a place, like, I just have the same answer as you. There is a place for it. It's unusual, but there are places you really defend these people. But I give you a story from I've been part of the, free school movement in the board for 70 years. That's about 25% of Swedish children go to that sector. And there was the year, and I've quit that now, but I was back on the year conference, and they have brought in this lady from the communal school, and she told this, I'll take it very quick, because it's very relevant to what you said. She told the story, this school is one of the few they was just not taking away one child. They closed down the school. Very unusual, and it was just
Explain that again. They
closed
the school, so basically they expelled everybody.
Yeah, they expelled everybody. It's a drastic. And then they start to open, and the school ministers would go in and restart it. And the big commune, they hired this principal lady, two of them, and they did this. They said to the school ministry, no, we will not be your assistants. You be our assistant. And the school minister of Sweden said yes. This showed boldness. And this school had been going downhill for 10 years. Finally, they had to quit. Every Friday, they had to close down the school, because everybody was fighting, so they had quit. Friday, 12 o'clock, everybody go, otherwise they will fight. These two ladies, they changed the school in 2 weeks. We were impressed, all of them. And the question was, how could you do that? Well, we started with the rules of the school. Every school have rules. And we said, there was only 250 students at that school, and they said there was not one person that should be expelled. 60 pupils should be expelled if they have followed that. They got them to follow the rules in 2 weeks. And I go, how did you, the guy leading, how did it happen? Yes, we called them to come in the afternoon with the parents, and we were talking to them. And every time we said, every time you don't keep the rules, you will sit here with us, and we will talk, and your parents will come. And all the 60 changed in 2 weeks. So I think many times we are too afraid to just put down our feet and say, this is it. And we don't need to, they were not angry, they said, these guys, it was very humiliating for them to listen to two ladies that were only 160 long. She showed himself, and everybody laughed. We just said, you must follow the rules. But they were consistent, so I think if we can be very friendly, but we could never bargain on these things. And so we could expel somebody, but not 60. I think we should start in the other end.
Some of our schools, if 60 people were expelled, there'd be no school anyway. Anyone else?
Can I just do a plug? This is mostly for Portugal, for the Netherlands, and for the UK. Graham, you probably know them. Transforming Lives for Good is an organization that started 20 years ago when they started to notice that children with behavioral difficulties in the classroom were high school dropouts. And they wanted to stop these kids from dropping out of school, so they started something called early intervention. And because there wasn't enough volunteers, they went to churches And so it's a church-based volunteer program where TLG trains church volunteers to go into the public school system with the most behaviorally challenged children. They get taken out of the classroom and spend 1 hour, 1 week with one coach for one or their whole academic career until grade 6. That program is now in Portugal, and it's just going into the Netherlands now. And we have found in Portugal radical changes. Teachers in the public school system are begging their leaders to have CCA come in. They ask us all the time, more volunteers please, because you come here with 5 volunteers, but we want to give you 15 children.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had children who could not, who they actually, with tape on the floor at recess time, had that child stand there because if they left, they would do damage either to people or to property. And they sat that child down with a coach, and at the end of the year, he was fully and completely integrated into class. The program, the training is not religious. What's religious, what's faithful are the coaches, and through their love are transforming lives for good. So if you have any connection or any desire, talk to Graham about TLG, or you can talk to me. I'm the chair of the board in Portugal, and I can also tell you about the Netherlands. And if you really, really want it in your country, I will put you in charge with Tim, in touch with Tim, who is the head of the whole thing. But it is an amazing, it's an amazing opportunity, both for churches, their lives are also transformed, and children.
Yeah, and I can say the same. And in Britain, it's been working especially well in inner city schools, really deprived, tough schools. Okay, we're almost at the end of the hour, so before I thank the panel and dismiss them, I'm just going to turn the tables and say that anybody here on the panel who would like to ask a question of all of these people, and we have a roving mic, and so we can pick on a few people and say, what do you think? So it's a bit spontaneous, this, but anybody got a question you would like to ask anyone here, and just get some kind of response?
I have a question.
Okay.
Who will tell me why you continue to be a teacher?
Okay, good question. Right. We have another beautiful assistant, Ponza. Oh no, you were beautiful before. Now you're twice as beautiful. Why do you continue to be a teacher?
Because we are crazy.
No such thing as French cynicism. Monsieur.
Love the children and love Jesus. So
Okay.
continue.
All right, we're going to use the mic. So if you want to make a contribution, we'll use the mic. Here we go. Off we go.
Thank you. Well, for my sake, it is. I'm only a teacher for 2 years now, and last week, before we were going to Portugal, I said to a colleague, I'm teaching now for 2 years, and every week, every day, I'm getting out of bed and I'm thinking, yes, I can go to school, I can teach them. So I'm still waiting for that day to come. I don't know when it's coming, and I hope it's not coming when I am saying, oh, I have to go to school and teach. So
It'll never come. You'll never have days like that.
You might have a minute or hour.
And
Hopefully not a minute.
anyone else? Why are you still a teacher?
I have a quick answer. To exercise what I believe is a God-given spiritual gift.
Mm-hmm.
So when we exercise our spiritual gift, I believe it's energizing in whatever context we work in.
Okay, thank you. Good answer. Anyone else? Come on, you're loads of teachers out there and you're still teaching. You've got to have an answer. Don't say it's for the money. Okay, Libby.
Yeah, a serious answer. I think that it's so important to invest your life in others. And when I'm thinking to this, we are people who can influence others. And we are not coming to impress them, but to influence them. And we can do it because we are Christians. But there is another answer in our country, for instance,
Which is?
which is
Which country?
Romania. Yeah.
Just so people
Give
know.
me a reason to be a teacher. And the answer is, I can give you 2, July and August.
June, July.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
For me, it's for the kingdom, because growing up, I remember the whole thing about, keep your faith, keep your religion to yourself. And this is before, this is on? Okay, way before I was a Christian, I remember hearing those stories, and, yeah, whatever. But the aftermath of that is that there is religion in school. Doesn't matter if it's, public school, it's called something else here. I'm hearing it refers to something else, but public school, private school, Christian school, there is religion in every school. Yeah, it's just a matter of whose religion. And secularism is a religion, the way it's approached today. Back when it was something different. There are very few true atheists. There are people who claim to be atheists, but there's very few true atheists. If you're truly atheist, you don't really care. I don't believe in Easter Bunny. Easter Bunny doesn't matter to me. Easter, it's all about Jesus. I'm making this too long, I'm sorry. But it's all about the kids. It's all about bringing a balance. Even if they choose not to follow Jesus, I want them to have every opportunity to have the knowledge about him, so they make that decision knowledge-based, fact-based, and yeah, I understand, but I'm going to reject that for this, that, or the other reason, but I want them to know Jesus, to know what it is they're rejecting. And I think that in public school, that is being subverted, it's being hidden, so the kids cannot make an informed decision, and I want them to be able to make an informed decision. It's a short.
That's great, thank you. All right, we're going to finish there. Let's pray.